to Games as Lit recommendations. I'm taking some time to get ahead on the show a little bit, so in lieu of this week's scheduled episode, I'm doing another one of these. It may not show much in the series at this point, but I love Japanese RPGs. I'm currently not analyzing any games over 20 hours or so until I can reach a level of Patreon support to take time off work to work on them, but once that happens, I have a long list of JRPGs I want to get to. Point is, I love them. But as time has gone on, the formulas have changed and the genre seems to be undergoing a lot of experiments. Most of them varying levels of bad, or at least not as good as they once were. It's one of the few artistic categories that seems to be better the more it sticks to what works instead of trying too many new things. So when a JRPG releases that sticks to the roots of the genre, it's usually something to be interested in. Like, say, a 4-disc Xbox 360 game from the creator of Final Fantasy with music composed by the legendary Nobuo Uematsu. This is Lost Odyssey. Make no mistake, I will analyze this game sometime. It just begs for it. The story is the exact best kind of story for Japanese RPGs. A fantastical setting with a well-developed and diverse cast of characters dealing with interesting, high-concept issues over the course of a 60-hour game. I mean, if that sounds unappealing to you, this game might not be your cup of tea, but otherwise you owe it to yourself to give it a go. The game stars Kaim, an immortal soldier whose memories of his 1,000 years have largely faded away. It's hard to summarize the story without giving anything away. Like most great JRPGs, it starts off small and raises the scale slowly as it goes on, so saying how it starts would be a false image of the story, but saying what it's ultimately about would ruin the suspense. But there are other immortals, lost family members, romance, sacrifice, all kinds of thematic elements that just come together splendidly. The characters are excellent, and the game takes its time to develop each of them in wonderful ways. You end up loving every single one of them by the end. It's also one of the very, very few games out there that includes a full family dynamic. I won't spoil too much, but there is actually a full family as playable party members, and their relationships factor into the story big time. You just don't see that in video games too often. But the star of the show here is Kaim's memories. As you go through the game, various things bring a lost memory back to his mind, and these memories are presented in a series of short stories written by Japanese author Kiyoshi Shigematsu. They're presented in something of a kinetic novel format, with music, sound effects, and visual flair to give the words more impact, and these are some incredible stories. If at least a couple of them don't make you cry, you have no soul. I mean seriously, the first one you get is about a little girl with a terminal illness as Kaim visits her for what he knows will be the last time, while she takes joy in the fact that she'll see him again in the afterlife. Well, he knows that he'll never actually see her again, because he can't die. It's freaking heartbreaking, and it's only the first one. There's plenty more where that came from. Between these memories and the game's story itself, the game is actually the most poignant and emotional take on immortality I've ever seen in fiction. It's that good. And the excellent soundtrack by Nobuo Uematsu certainly doesn't hurt. The gameplay is refreshingly old school, with a true turn-based system, a variety of party members with different strengths and abilities, and a system kind of reminiscent of Legend of Dragoon, except that instead of matching attack patterns, you time a single strike which has different effects depending on your equipment. Many of the best turn-based battle systems are the ones that use one or two unique mechanics to add depth to a classic system, and this game nails it. It's not perfect, of course, nothing ever is. There's still a bit of grinding, but the encounter rates are well paced enough that I never got too annoyed with it. Some of the writing can be a bit awkward, as it tends to be when smaller studios with smaller budgets needs to translate into English, and while the voice acting is generally excellent, especially the always excellent Tara Strong as Seth, there are a couple characters, most notably the kids, who don't quite hit the same bar as the rest of the cast. But ultimately, the flaws are easy to overlook, especially if you've been yearning for a classically designed RPG experience. If you haven't heard of this one, it's probably because it was part of an early attempt to give the Xbox 360 more appeal in the East, and it's only available on that system. I'm really hoping it gets a PC port at some point, but in the meantime you'll need a 360 to play it. But man, it's one of the few games that really makes that system worth it. So if you're looking for a Japanese RPG with the soul of classic Final Fantasy and the visuals of modern HD gaming, you absolutely can't go wrong with Lost Odyssey. It has the Games as Lit seal of approval. Later.